Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so back in August, I made a tier list video of all the mythic items in League of Legends, and that was pretty fun, so we're gonna do it again. If you remember from that video, I brought up how trying to list every top laner is gonna take far too long because there's 60 champions that can be played top? So I figured out an alternative. Instead of doing a rankings video by role, we're gonna do it by class, and what better way to kick this off than by talking about the most despised group of champions, Assassins. In light of the difference between items and champions, let me brief you on how I plan to do this ranking, but before we do that, I got a lot of people asking me for a visual on screen to make it easier to get the end result. So what I'm gonna do for this one is I'll have my editor put up a tier list graphic somewhere on, bottom left hand corner, bottom right hand corner, or something that will update each new champion I cover. So here are the tiers. We have good design, which is the best score you can get, pretty self-explanatory. Fair design, by fair I mean it's decent, not that great but not too bad either, something you can respect but wouldn't be your first call. Passable design, these are champions where there's a few things about them you're not all too happy about, but they're not irredeemable. And then ass, need I say more? As for how I'll be grading them, it's going to be a mixture of a few things. For one, gameplay. If they have an interesting gimmick, playstyle, and theme to them, how well their kit was designed to match that theme, and whether they have obvious counterplay, if they're balanced quote-unquote, and overall if I personally like the champion or not. The Assassin subclass houses 16 champions, which you see on screen right now. The only two that are missing here are Shadow Assassin Kayn and LeBlanc, which I will be including as well. Last thing, in case it wasn't implied, this video, like every other tier list video, is purely subjective and my personal opinion. Just because I have a different opinion than you doesn't mean I hate you or think you should die in a hole. This isn't Twitter. Purely for entertainment purposes, but given that I think all of us hate assassins, I think we should be able to find some common ground. We're gonna go in alphabetical order, so grab a drink and a snack and prepare for me to make your ears bleed. Akali is first. Now, if we look at her in terms of gameplay and balance, I think we can all agree she belongs in S tier, but judging by her thematic design and in the current state she is now, I think it's fine to move her up a bit. She's no longer this disgusting 1v9 tower diver that can two-shot any champion while being unkillable. It took a really long time to find some semblance of stability for her, but right now she's okay. I just made a retrospective on her rework and I still stand by the notion that from a narrative stance her abilities are fantastically designed. Highly technical and explosive when played by someone who knows how to use her to the fullest, but her pass weighs down on her, like a lot. I will be referencing past iterations of other assassins, but no one comes close to the amount of turmoil Akali was subjected to in her patch history. Now Diana's a bit strange. The way she plays certainly fulfills the burst required to be an assassin, but everything else about her screams diver. I like to think of her sort of as the AP version of Rengar though. By definition, assassins are intended to be poor team fighters to offset their high mixture of mobility and power, as their goal is to go in, quickly strike down a target, then get out. Diana's team fighting is incredible since Moonfall deals more damage for each champion she pulls in. However, she doesn't have a reliable escape. Once she gets in, she has to punch her way out or die trying. Gameplay-wise, she's been pretty healthy overall and not someone I would target ban. Yes, I know for a time Jungle Diana was a little too strong, but considering her very linear engage and lack of escape options, she's definitely a respectable champion. I would have put her in good design, but she gets knocked down a peg because she's not really an assassin, more of a fighter. Speaking of good design, Echo is going to be our first champion. Say what you want about him, I think he's a beautifully designed one. AP melee skirmishers are hard to make work, but he's one of the few. Aside from phase drive, all of Echo's abilities have a time delay attached to them, true to his lore as someone who can manipulate time. Most of his pressure is dependent on landing his abilities perfectly, since it's really easy to miss everything on this guy and contribute nothing. People do give him a hard time for his ultimate being too effective of a get out of jail free card, but it's exactly the type of ability you would expect on a guy like him. There's also a trade-off behind it because if you use it as an escape you therefore do not get the damage, and it's a psychological game because some Echo players get way too complacent in their ability to blip out of danger that they rush recklessly into a fight, then get locked down and bursted. I think there's ample amounts of counterplay to his kit, and he's just a really solid champion with a colorful and fun design. Up next is Evelynn. If I could speak freely, I want to put her in S tier so badly, and no, not for the reasons you think, but I do understand why she is the way she is. Her playstyle as this shadowy figure who can sneak around and assassinate someone is something you see in almost every game. Compared to the previous iteration, this version of Evelynn is much better. The only reason why people dislike her so much is because stealth is too powerful of a mechanic in this game, since vision is one of the most important tools in MOBAs. It's also because Evelynn is a very macro-focused assassin, so if you're up against players with bad macro, you will obviously look a lot more suffocating than you actually are. Just like Diana, she can pull off some really dumb shenanigans, but she's inherently balanced by her inability to stave off pressure. By that I mean certain team compositions completely just ruin her. Anyway, I like her from a design standpoint, hate her from a gameplay standpoint. Fair is fair though. Fizz. Truthfully, I think public opinion on him has softened over the years. He used to be one of the most despised champions of all time for his infamous playful trickster, a dash that made him untargetable while also dealing an insane amount of AoE damage to anyone he lands on. But with the inclusion of like every new champion since then, it's no longer that much of a problem. I put him in fair design because Playful Trickster, as broken as it is also an ability that has the majority of his kit's pressure. If you want to gap close on a target, or if you're trying to dodge something, you have to burn your E, which means you're down on a lot of damage, kind of the same way Echo's ultimate works. It's a very punishable ability, and the rest of his kit is one-dimensional with huge windows of vulnerability. I find his untargetability to be much more fair than like Camille's ultimate because the rest of Fizz's abilities are pretty mellow for an assassin. He doesn't have a Cho'Gath ultimate on his Q. It almost seems like Fizz got power crept when players just don't consider him public enemy number 1 anymore. Heading back down into passable tier is Kassadin. Personally, I don't consider him to be an assassin at all, more of a skirmisher. He does have bursty elements but doesn't have abilities and a playstyle that gives off the impression that he's an assassin. So there's already a bit of dissonance there. I rank him as passable because he's a product of old and outdated champion design. 3 random damaging abilities with no cohesion between them outside of just mashing them together after you ult on someone. He also used to build durability items like Rod of Ages, Frozen Heart and such just to stall for late game, which again goes against the idea of a high risk high reward champion, assassins. Then again, Kassadin isn't a horrendous champion with no counterplay or an extremely degenerate playstyle. He could use a rework though. Now, for the first S tier champion is Katarina, the OG face roll pentakiller. If we're grading her strictly on her outplay potential and burst, she's pretty well done, and probably really fun to play, but I put her at the bottom because she's the most extreme assassin in the game while also having privileges no other assassin could even dream of. Even though she doesn't have stealth like Akali or untargetability like Fizz, she also is one of the few champions in the game that can quite unexaggeratedly 1v9 if the enemy team so much as leaves one opening. She's not as face rolly as her previous iteration, but when she's ahead and your team has no fast acting or point and click lockdown, there's nothing you can do. Just about every other assassin in the game, no matter how fed they are, has an opening that you can exploit. But for Katarina, there might be cases where there is none. I still don't understand why they gave her abilities on hit effects because all that did was just make her more broken. Most people would describe her as the champion that hard loses lane but roams once, gets a triple kill, then all of a sudden explodes everyone in team fights. Continuing on, Kha'Zix is the second champion to be part of the good design tier. To this day, I think he's one of the best designed assassins in the game. He has 2 central mechanics, one of which is isolation, which gives him greater strength against enemies who are alone. Rightfully so, as he's an assassin. His evolution mechanic is the second one and also very well made, at least the current version. I don't think anyone liked his perma-stealth mechanic, but it touches on his theme as a praying mantis that adapts to his surroundings. Part of being an assassin is to adapt to situations. If the enemy team is alone, capitalize on it and punish accordingly. If they're grouped up, you have to be patient and wait for an opening. It's why Kha'Zix is up top while Katarina is at the bottom. To play Kha'Zix well, you have to know exactly which abilities to evolve depending on the situation and what angle to take when you're going into a fight. Katarina doesn't really care about anything and simply just waits for the enemy team to stop paying attention to her before she goes in and kills everyone the same regardless. Kha'Zix is a cool champion. Even when he's ahead, you have to play him smart because it's really easy to mess up in fights. In a way, he shares that same trait with Echo. And now we're going right back down to S tier, and that's where I'm putting Kayn, specifically Shadow Assassin. The ironic thing is, when he first came out, everyone was quick to dismiss blue form as the inferior one. But nowadays I see people going blue Kayn even against tanks and bruisers. The problem with him is that once he transforms and gets a couple items, it becomes way too easy to play him for how much damage he does. He can walk through walls, which gives him comparable if not better tempo than even Talon, and I would go so far as to say he's just Talon but better in almost every way. You can't slow him thanks to his E. His ultimate is a point and click 3-second on target ability that can get his cooldowns back, and his damage is so fast few champions can do anything about it. He's one of the best assassins in the game because just like Katarina, he usually ignores everything going on around him and makes a beeline for this one person and just destroys them while being able to escape because he has like 700 movement speed through walls. The other issue is that his basic abilities are really generic that just so happen to be good for assassination. But in his defense, it's because they have to be like that just to allow for both red or blue form. We're gonna stay in S tier for one more round and put LeBlanc in there too. She's a bit different from Katarina and Kayn in that unlike those two who can blitz you 100 to 0 in the blink of an eye, LeBlanc is in S tier because she's annoying as hell. If you play any champion with short range, no crowd control or a gap closer, you will never be able to touch her. Like ever. Depending on who you're playing, she can permakite you with distortion and ethereal chains, slowly whittling you down while making you run in circles. Admittedly, I'm biased because I play fighters, but I don't think any player has a good opinion of her. Even other assassin mains don't like fighting LeBlanc because imagine if Zed could blink to a shadow and then blink back on the same cast. That'd be broken. LeBlanc's playstyle is about deception and trickery, but it doesn't really translate that well in game. The vibe she gives off is more like haha you can't hit me than actually playing mind games with her opponent. There's little risk in playing her because she's a ranged champion with some of the best combat mobility in the game. Back to the fair category though, I'm gonna put Nocturne in there. He was another recent terror in Season 11, no pun intended, back when Stridebreaker still had a dash. But after all that was done, he then disappeared off the face of the earth, which tends to happen a lot for him. He's either why everyone plays or why no one plays. Anyway, Nocturne's Paranoia is the ultimate assassination tool. Black out everyone's field of vision and lock onto one person. His Q gives him damage and stick potential, W to protect himself from counterattack, and E to lock down someone so he can slash away at them. Kind of unconventional, but it's effective and reasonable. He's the definition of a one and done assassin, which inherently makes him fair because after that one target, he's sort of useless. Also sort of a product of outdated design. Moving on to Pyke, Passable. I say Passable because his basic kit was really well done. Bone Skewer, Ghost Water Dive, and Phantom Undertow are all interesting abilities with unique functions. Considering he's from Bilgewater, I think he was designed pretty competently. But then there's his ultimate. This is the only thing preventing Pyke from being all the way up in good design, and it's also the only thing in his kit that makes him an assassin. Even then, it's not really assassination so much as it is a way for him to finish off low health targets for extreme amounts of gold. Like I said, the rest of his kit is very well done, but if Riot was trying to make an assassin support, this was not the way to go. Too much of his power budget is allocated to one ability that's incongruous from the rest of his gameplay. He's a prime example of a champion with an all-around nice and interactive kit, but just has that one busted ability that ruins everything. Alright, up next is Qiyana. Call me old-fashioned, but the point of an assassin, if you haven't deduced just by my previous rankings, is to be discreet, fast, and eliminate choice targets one at a time. New assassins, such as Qiyana, throw this design formula out the window and instead have enough kill power and AoE damage to wipe out entire teams by themselves. Her interaction with elements is clever and well thought out because it gives her different applications for her Q, bonus damage, or a stealth, or a root. But assassins should not be able to destroy multiple targets simultaneously. The only reason why Diana gets a pass on this is because she's more of a burst diver, but assassins should not be able to nuke entire teams with just the press of a button. I'm keeping her in Passable though and not S tier because she's actually hard to play and requires tactical execution as opposed to Blue Kayn. Next, I'm gonna put Rengar in good design. This one might cause a lot of disagreement, so let me explain. He's seen better days. I made a video talking about all the reasons why he's been declining in popularity, but popularity isn't conducive to good or bad design. Rengar's theme and playstyle are exactly what an assassin should be. Someone who locks onto one target and uses their superior mobility to blast them out of a fight. His mechanic of jumping from brushes is to this day the best assassin gimmick I've seen. He is the one-shot champion. Maybe not as much now as back then when he had a triple Q, but I still think he's the epitome of an assassin, someone who takes risks to perform well and can take over games through psychological pressure, but no matter how strong they are, there's always a chance you can shut them down. Kha'Zix and Rengar both share this, even though the former is more versatile. Some of you may argue that people build in Bruiser with Gore Drinker and Sterak's, which are antithetical to assassins being fast and squishy. 1. That's only in the top lane, jungle Rengar is still 100% burst, and 2. The circumstances around his declining popularity are not due to his design, but rather the changing environment. The best assassins are ones who can 1v5 teamfight, which is absurd. Anyway, moving on, Shaco, in the context of an assassin, he sucks. He doesn't even play like an assassin at all these days. Shaco would be better designated as a specialist because of all the wacky playstyles he has. By that logic, he'd be hard ass tier. Then again, contrary to LeBlanc, Shaco's entire gimmick is about sowing chaos everywhere he goes. He's tricky to deal with, and that's his whole design. He's intended to be an annoying piece of shit. The assassin component of his gameplay is when he goes invisible, sneaks behind vulnerable targets and stabs them in the back, literally. Thematically it makes sense, but with how prevalent AP Shaco has become, I don't think he's a good representation of an assassin anymore. They nerfed his stealth duration and gave his clone boxes for the fear, which lowered the viability of AD one-shot Shaco while incentivizing players to go AP Shaco just to make use of the huge zone control and disruption with his boxes and ultimate. He's just a mess right now. I really think he should be reworked, but that's just me. Last champion to go into good design is Talon. Once again, he embodies what an assassin should be. Fast on their feet, locks onto one target and clears them from the field quickly. That's his job. I'm aware that everyone lately has been building Bruiser Talon with Gore Drinker, Black Cleaver and whatnot, but the same reason every assassin is building Bruiser right now, it's for team fighting and survival. A lot of people like to make fun of him as a generic Assassin's Creed ripoff, but I mean, that only proves the point that Talon has a good design. His mission is to run around the map looking for easy targets, get in and get out quickly using his wall hops to evade any response. I don't know what else to say about him, he's a textbook assassin. Finally, we get to Yone, S tier, and a discussion. And to wrap things up, we have Zed. I thought about putting him in good design initially, very hard champion to master, endless outplay potential with his shadows, and fulfills the criteria of an elusive, deadly, but also squishy champion. For all intents and purposes, he's a healthier version of LeBlanc. He can't dash in then blink out with Living Shadow, he has to choose one or the other. Yes, he can do it for his ultimate, but only if he's already close to his target. The only thing preventing him from being at the top is that he is a little too safe. His combo isn't as one-dimensional point and click as Talon's, but he has a lot of options, a little too many. Everything else about him screams good design. Manipulating shadows to copy his attacks and such is awesome, but he does have the ability to stifle counterplay to some degree, which is a little bit unfair. Okay, so that wraps up every single assassin in the game. I understand there's gonna be a lot of discussion in the comments, and I welcome it, but please do keep things civil. The way people see champions is greatly influenced by their own personal anecdotes. A mid lane Syndra one-trick may see Fizz as the spawn of Satan, while a top lane Naxx main thinks he's a non-issue. Some people might think Kayn is perfectly fine, others will accuse him of being the most elo-inflating jungler in the game. Just please make sure to give everyone the benefit of the doubt since everything is different. Hope you guys enjoyed watching though. I had a ton of fun making this video, and I will plan on making an episode for every class if you want to see more. There's going to be one on Juggernauts, on Marksmen, on Enchanters, Mages, things like that. So I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like to support the channel. Don't forget to subscribe to catch future episodes, follow me on social media, and join my Discord server if you haven't yet, and check out my previous rankings video where I list every mythic item in the game. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon for the next one. Take care.